Okay, we're going to begin interval notation, and now this is strange. You're used to using open circles and closed circles, and what we're going to find out is that a parenthesis will be a left endpoint when you have an open circle. A parenthesis like this will be a right endpoint when you have an open circle. We use brackets when they're closed, so the left endpoint will look like this and the right endpoint will look like this. Now what happens when you see a shaded arrow going to the right? That always means that the arrowhead represents plus infinity. And an arrowhead heading to the left, we know we're heading towards negative infinity, and that will be the abbreviation. Positive infinity and negative infinity will always be in parentheses by convention. It's both open and closed. You don't need to confuse yourself. So when you see just an arrow left, it'll be some kind of number, open or closed, but the plus infinity will appear last and will be in a open parenthesis, not a bracket. Now, what happens when you see an arrow left? Well, of course, the negative infinity is the first thing you're going to see, and either the number will appear second with a closed bracket or an open bracket. Now, for some examples to try to explain what we're doing. So when I tell you that x is greater than 2, this is the picture you should have in mind. Now, this is the picture you're going to see in a book. They're not going to close they're going to not put an open circle, but a left bracket. And they might not even shade anything. They might just put the left bracket. And so now when I go to rewrite this, I always say I have to see two numbers, and it could be an infinity. On the left is 2, on the right's positive infinity. So I wrote both of those. And now they're both in parentheses because the 2 was open. Infinity is always open. X greater than or equal to -1. Closed dot on the -1, arrowhead shaded. This is what we're used to. Now it will just have a bracket on -1, might not have any of this shaded. And so when I look at it, what's my left number, -1, what represents the right number, positive infinity, but closed for the -1. So that's a square bracket and always open on an infinity. So the other form of x greater than 2 looks like you've written an ordered pair. And another notation for x greater than or equal to -1 looks like another ordered pair. So now what happens when you go less than -3 and you're on your way to negative infinity? This is what we're used to. But now you're going to put a parenthesis in place of the open circle, and they might not even shade the stuff in between. And notice what appears first is the negative infinity, then the -3. So always number line order and separate with a comma, and you have parentheses. And then now what happens when we see x is less than or equal to 4? Close dot. This is what you're used to. Now it could be a square bracket. Again, they might not shade anything, just the square bracket and the arrowhead. But now I've got to put an ordered pair, so to speak, starting with the left number and a right number. My left coordinate would be negative infinity, although that's not a real number. And then that's supposed to just be 4. Hold on, let me fix that. And then to 4. Notice it's closed. Now what happens when we have no arrows? We just have two inequalities. We always write with the is less than symbol or less than or equal to. We never use greater than. I know you can write the answer that way, but when you go to write interval notation, you cannot. Interval notation assumes you always have number line order. We know this means this. Therefore, instead of the closed dots, give me the square brackets. Again, I want these two ordered pairs. This will be the first number, second number. So -1, 2. These were both closed. So the left side with the left bracket, the right side with the right bracket. Now the next one, the left one is closed, the right one isn't. I must write my ordered pair, so to speak, in this order, -1, 2. Here's what the graph would look like. -1, 2. What did I have? An equal and a not equal. So an equal means left side closed, right side is open with a parenthesis. Again, -1 to 2. Now it's open, then closed. What would that picture look like? Parenthesis, square bracket. But I still want the numbers in number line order. -1 first, 2 second. So note I have -1, comma 2. -1 is open, 2 is closed. So -1 has a left parenthesis and 2 has a right closed bracket. Nobody's closed, they're both open. And so now this is what the picture would look like. And now we would write it this way, and that looks like it's an order or pair. Now that's tough. You need to know that if this is a point or an interval, because the directions mean everything. We know this means an interval, and typically somebody would write X is in -1, 2 to help you out. Now, what happens when I see two inequalities or two arrows? We're going to do these as directions today, and this will be a video to refer back to, but we're not going to do these until worksheet 3. And so what happens when I see two of them? This is what I'm used to. So now I just take the closed circle and make it a square bracket, and the other closed circle, make it a square bracket. Now I'm going to have two separate ordered pairs to write, -infinity to -1 and 2 to +infinity. See, it looks like ordered pairs. They really aren't, but open on the infinities and closed on the numbers. The next one, notice I'm closed less than or equal to -1, open when I'm greater than 2. So the new picture would look like this, -1 to 2. Notice if I have to write something in ordered pair type form, -infinity to -1, stop, to +infinity, stop. And we put the little U in, it means union. We've talked about this before. That's the symbolic symbol for the word or. The infinities get open parentheses, but notice -1 was closed, so its right bracket is closed. 2 is open, so the left one is a parenthesis. And now the left one's open and the right one's closed, so it is a parenthesis, then a square bracket. I still have to say all your first, -1, -infinity, -1, then 2, +infinity. The infinities get the parentheses, and the only one that's closed, the 2, gets the square bracket. Now they're both open, so everything's a parenthesis. So when I write it as two numbers, -infinity, -1, although we know that's not a number, and 2, +infinity, they all get parentheses. Now we have some leftover category. How do you write all real numbers? Well, everything's shaded, and we just say -infinity. I forgot to put a little -infinity there and a +infinity there, but you all can just imagine that. What happens if I say I just don't have the number 1, also known as less than 1 or greater than 1? This is what the picture would look like. With parentheses, it would look like this. Sadly, in interval notation, it's going to look more like this because you're going to do -infinity to 1, both open, 1 to +infinity, both open. And then let's get weirder. Let's throw out 2 points. Notice if I don't write it with the not equal to notation, it's more akin to interval notation. I can see I'm going to have 3 intervals to do. I have -infinity to 1, then 1 to 3, and then 3 to +infinity, and everything has parentheses. Okay, now let's go and look at worksheet 1. What's it going to look like? I want to, in the first section, write in interval notation. These examples aren't in order of appearance. I just wrote down some examples. So when they say X is less than or equal to 4, I think of this picture. So my numbers are going to be negative infinity, comma 4, open, closed. And you can see parenthesis, square bracket. I look at this one and immediately I'm thinking 4 to 8. And both are closed, and you can see this. And what did I write? 4 to 8. 4 comma 8, both closed. Now, x is greater than or equal to 1. What am I going to think? Well, I only see one number. It means the other one has to be an infinity. Who's first? Negative 1, then positive infinity. So I wrote negative 1, positive infinity. Then I went back and said closed and open. So square bracket, parenthesis. Again, I see both numbers, so I know I'm negative 4 comma 1. They're both open, and that means negative 4 comma 1 gets parentheses. X is greater than 5. It means this. Oh, wow, I don't see two numbers, so I need my infinity. 5 plus infinity. So 5 comma infinity, open, and the infinities are always open. X less than negative 4. Oh, I only see one number. I've got to think this picture. Oh, negative infinity appears, then negative 4. So negative infinity, negative 4. And he's always a parenthesis, and that's a parenthesis, so we see only parentheses. Negative 3 to 2, I see the numbers, negative 3 comma 2. I see closed, then I see open. And so I wrote my negative 3, 2. Closed means a square bracket. Open means a parenthesis. Negative 5 is less than or equal to 6. I see my two numbers, negative 5 comma 6. I see open on negative 5, closed on 6. And so what's going to happen? Oh, that's supposed to be a negative 5. Pretend like you know what? I'm just going to get rid of the 5s here. Okay, so the answer's right. Forgot to bring a marker in. So we'll just say that this one's 5 to 6, 5 to 6. So it's 5 to 6. What do we know? Open, then closed. So that's a parenthesis, closed dot, parenthesis, closed dot. And then all reals, we know it's everything. And when you go to write all reals, negative infinity, positive infinity, it's going to be with parentheses. Please remember a closed dot on the left is a left bracket. A closed dot to the right is a right bracket. An open circle on the left is a parenthesis. An open circle on the right is a right parenthesis. Now we got one more, and what I'm going to do is just put it up here in front of my first abort. Maybe. I thought, well, get used to at home. Oh, well. So now what happens when I want to go to interval notation to inequality notation? Well, I see 5, and then I want to go to positive infinity. Mentally, that means 5 goes all the way to the right, so that's just x is greater than. Notice this says you have to go greater, so x is greater, and all I needed to know was the number. This one said I'm between two numbers, and I have equal signs. So notice how I wrote the equal at less than or equal to x less than or equal. Then I just went back and said, what are the numbers? Negative 1 and 4. I go to my example 3. Notice that means that I have a left arrow, then a number. So I showed the picture. Oh, what does that mean? I'm less than. See, that arrow is your inequality symbol. Only when it's closed, I have to put an equal to on it. So the red represents what I know already, just because I see negative infinity and a closed bracket. And then I find the number. Next, negative 2 to 3. That tells me that they're both open. Here's what your picture looks like. But what does this mean? It means that your x is in the middle and that I'm only using less than symbols, because remember, we can only use a greater than symbol when we have an arrowhead. So I have my less than symbols, and I said, what were my numbers? Negative 2 on the left and 3 on the right. Then down to number 5. Notice I'm seeing a positive infinity. This tells me I'm going to have an arrowhead. So -6 is closed, then I go to an arrowhead. Oh, that arrowhead tells me I'm a greater than symbol, but it says greater than or equal to. So notice in red I have x is greater than or equal to, and my number is -6. Again, I have a squeeze play, 4 to 7. Open and closed. Here's my picture. So how do I write that? Well, this is, remember, only less than symbols. Less than or equal to. So in red, I wrote less than x, less than or equal to, who's first, -4, who's last, 7. I see a negative infinity. That's a left arrowhead. That means, look at the left arrowhead. It's forming in this less than symbol. That's open, so I wrote x less than, and I found the number was 2. For number 8, -4 closed, 2 open. I can only use the as less than symbol, but at -4 it has to be closed, and at 2 it has to be open, so less than or equal to. X is less than 2, and then I put the left number on the left and the right number on the right. And negative infinity to positive infinity just says you're shading everything and you're all real numbers. We will continue the weird ones again on interval 3. You get to practice this one for 2 days, for interval 1 and interval 2.